Hi, thanks for joining us this morning. We're just going to get started right away since we have a lot of information to cover, and plus, this webinar will also be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you can watch it later. So welcome to the Social Sciences Academic Resource Center's webinar on common interview questions. Today's session, we are going to be covering the most common interview questions and how to answer them. My name is Sophie, and I am a SARC peer consultant. I am joined today by my colleague, Alina. Alina, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello. So I'm Alina, and I'm also another peer consultant at SARC.
So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them through the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Alina.
Thank you, Sophie. So let's go ahead and get started into how to answer, or what are some general tips to present yourself well during an interview. So the first tip is to be prepared. And I noticed in one of the pre-submitted questions that y'all were wondering about how to, manage your stress during an interview. And obviously, an interview is a very stressful event. But in order to do so, what we recommend is to just be prepared and practice a lot prior to an interview so that you're not nervous as much during the fact. So one way that you can do so is to research the company ahead of time or research, look at the job description and see what the company is looking for in an ideal candidate and be prepared to speak about experiences that you've listed in your resume or your cover letter. And this is important because they may ask you like, oh, I saw that you did this in your resume. Could you please elaborate on that? And if you're not able to answer that, then that's going to look really bad because you're presenting this um, as something that you've done and you want to showcase that to the employer. And brainstorm responses is another way to prepare ahead of time. So what I like to do personally is create a Google Doc for every single interview that I do. And I would list like all the common interview questions and then just think about like what I want to say. And the reason I say I have a different one for every interview is because I want to cater my responses to the specific position or the specific company that I'm applying for. And also, as I'm gaining experiences in school or through other work experiences, my responses are definitely going to change. So having a different, you know, response sheet to brainstorm on is really important. And then record yourself. When you're practicing, maybe have a Zoom open and then just record yourself talk or answer interview questions verbally and see how you do. See if you're using hand gestures, if you're making eye contact to the camera, if your answers are concise. And that's a really great way to, have feedback for yourself. And another way to be less nervous about, the interview itself is to anticipate potential issues. So assuming that this is going to be a virtual interview, or maybe it's over the phone, maybe it's over a video call like Zoom, probably a potential issue that would happen is audio issues. And one way to combat that, for example, is if your Zoom audio is going like cutting in and out, have your phone nearby next to you on silent. But if something like that happens and you can't really hear well, you can actually just dial in through your phone and continue the interview there. Another tip is to present your best self to an employer or an interviewer, and hopefully yourself is your best self. But to do so, make sure to smile, make sure to dress appropriately. So if people usually in a company wear, like casual, like a t-shirt and jeans, we would recommend dressing a little bit more professional. So maybe business casual would be appropriate. But if a lot of people on a uh, daily basis, they wear business professional, that would also be your dress code. And then arrive early. So whether it's a phone call or on Zoom, make sure you are prepared to take the call. And if it's on Zoom, probably enter the Zoom link, like 2 to 3 minutes early to show that you are proactive. And then make eye contact with the camera. And that's just so that you're not wandering around and being distracted by things going on around you. And you can also have a professional, virtual background if you prefer that. And actively listening to the interviewer is important because you don't want to have them repeat their question multiple times throughout your interview. And when you're speaking, try to avoid filler words. And it's okay to show your character because this is basically the one or few opportunities for the employer to get to talk to you one-on-one before they decide whether or not they want to extend an offer to you. So you want to be able to show who you are and show your passions. And if there's a question that you get stumped on, and it's probably going to happen in an interview where they ask you a question that you're not prepared for, and you don't really know how to answer it, it's okay to say, that's a really great question. Is it okay if I take a couple moments to think about my response? And this actually shows a really great skill that you want to kind of organize your thoughts before just rambling on, and you want to have everything concise. And that's also another tip, is to keep your responses concise. Thirdly, we have follow-up. So always thank everyone that's involved in this process. So thank them for their time or thank them for the opportunity to interview you. And you can do so in a thank you email as well. So try to send these within 24 hours of the interview. And when you're writing a thank you email, that's kind of an opportunity for you to make a final lasting impression. And you can say, I really enjoyed being able to share with you, during my interview about this, like my background that like motivated me to pursue this kind of field, or something like refer to something that you talked about in your interview and have them read it and remember you and the things that you talked about. So moving on to the next slide, another tip when responding to interview questions is using the STAR method. So there's a lot of different acronyms that basically mean the same thing, but this is kind of a framework that you want to use when you're answering behavioral questions. You want to start with the situation. So describe kind of what the context was of your role, what position you were holding at the time, and identify any challenges that you wanted to overcome or the company was trying to tackle. And then talking about the task next is kind of describing what kinds of solutions or goals that you worked on or that you were assigned if your manager just told you to do it that contributed to this greater issue or this greater challenge or goal. And then in terms of action, you want to be really specific in what you do and recount the details for you to handle the situation. And this is a really great place for you to insert, the skills that are listed in the job description. Like in a strong candidate, we want someone who is a strong communicator. And if it applies in this interview question, talk about how you communicated effectively in your action. And then as for result, think about the impact that you had to the company or to other people. If possible, try to quantify your results. So for example, if you were working on a marketing campaign, say that, I increased marketing or engagement, social media engagement by this much percent, or if you are hosting events, say that, oh, I hosted an event for this many people. And moving on, I'll hand it off to Sophie.
Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the frequently asked interview questions, and we'll be providing suggestions and sample responses. Next slide, please. So the first question we're going to be tackling is the tell me about yourself question. So this is likely going to be the first question you're going to be asked during your interview, and interviewers use it as a way to get to know you as a candidate better, as well as hear a summary of your background. And you can kind of think of this as a professional icebreaker question. But since it is a formal job interview, you should avoid talking about personal information like political or religious views, because those could be sensitive topics. What they want to know is who you are as a professional, what are things you're passionate about, what you like to do on your free time, and how you are involved in your community. And so some things you should know are: one, keep your response short, because this is only the first question of many. And to keep your response short, avoid summarizing your entire resume. Don't rush into a new conversation, because you'll have plenty of chances to go specifically into your experiences and your skills later on in the interview. So focus on highlighting your personality. So in the sample answer we've provided, this person does a little bit of storytelling in their answer. They say, I've always been passionate about X, Y, and Z, and this all started when blank event happened to me. Ever since then, I knew I wanted to pursue a career in blank. In my current role, I do blank. And then outside of the office, I enjoy, doing whatever hobby. Next slide, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophie. So the next question we wanted to discuss is, why do you want to work here? So this is a really interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked this, but you obviously want to be prepared for these kinds of questions. And this question is really important because the employer is trying to gauge whether you know what you want to do for your professional goals and whether or not you know if the position that you're interviewing for matches and aligns with those goals. So what you want to do is self-reflection. And I think this is really important. For me personally, last year, around this time, I was applying for a lot of internships in marketing or anything business related really. But after a lot of self-reflection, I kind of realized that the only reason I wanted to work in business was because my parents want me to work in a field like that. And that's not really a good answer to provide, employers, and it's not good for the company. It's not good for myself because I'm not doing something that I'm passionate about. So self-reflection is really important because then you're able to define and, hone in what you're genuinely passionate about. And for me, that's research. So if I were to talk about research, I can talk a lot about why I'm passionate about it and why I would want to work in a research lab. So once you're able to know that for yourself, I think answering this question will be pretty straightforward. And you're able to express genuine interest, maybe even refer to information that the company's provided on their website. So if they have, a mission or vision statement or some company values that you resonate with, go ahead and talk about that. Speak about how you can contribute to the company. And one thing to avoid is only wanting the job for its perks. And although it's important to have or to apply to jobs that benefit us, if we talk about that when answering this question, it might come off as, oh, this is the only reason that you're working here. Like you only want to work here because there's paid vacation days, So some samples. Oh, actually, one sample that I really like is the second one. So I read a news article a few months ago about your philanthropy events for the community. Giving back is a significant value of mine because I've done, like 10 years of community service in these organizations, and I'm really passionate about giving back to the community because of this, and I feel like I can contribute to the company, or I really see myself fitting in this company culture. So something along those lines is a really great way to connect yourself with the company. But I specifically like this response because it says that I read a news article a few months ago, which it's not even like part of the question, but it shows that you've done extra work. It shows that you are knowledgeable about the industry. It shows that you care about learning, you care to learn about other things or the bigger picture of things and what the company is doing. So I think this is a really great response because even though they don't ask you about it, then now they know, that you've been doing your extra homework, and this will set you apart from other candidates.
Thanks, Alina. So the next question we're going to be talking about is, why should we hire you? You may also hear other variations of this question, like why would you be a good fit for this position, or why are you the best person for this job? And this question is arguably one of the more important ones because here you're trying to sell yourself. The interviewer needs to be convinced that 1, you possess the skills and experiences to excel in this job. 2, you can do the work and deliver results. And lastly, you can mesh well with their team and bring something to the table. And so to ace this question, start by revisiting the job description the company or organization has posted. I think Alina talked a little bit about that in the previous question. Highlight the most important qualifications for this position in the company's perspective, and also the areas you shine in. For example, in a project management role, You might be asked to provide support to other departments to develop a program in line with their strategic direction. So this requires teamwork, cooperation, and the ability to meet deadlines and follow company guidelines. And so technical skills might include something like Microsoft Office or Salesforce. And so during your interview, these are some items you want to reiterate. An example answer would be, I have the experience and attitude to excel in this position. I have blank years of experience in blank skill, including an internship or former position at whatever company or organization. And I also forgot to mention earlier that attitude can be a selling point. For example, are you someone who can see the positive side of things? Can you look past failures? And are you willing to try something again for maybe, I don't know, the 20th time? Next slide, please.
Awesome. So now let's go ahead and answer everyone's favorite question. What are your strengths and your weaknesses? So this question is basically asked to gauge one's self-awareness. So they want to see if you're able to answer this question without being overly confident or arrogant, but also not underselling yourself as a strong candidate. So what you want to do if the question is what is your greatest strength? You want to provide a relevant strength to the position. So also providing specific examples is important. So if you're applying to a UI UX design role or marketing role, you probably want to say something along the lines of creativity or innovation. If you're applying to more of a team-based role, you want to say, or customer service even, you want to say interpersonal skills and even collaboration or leadership. So try to avoid listing vague strengths. So I think it's more beneficial if you speak about one or two really strong strengths and are able to provide specific examples, maybe that you take from your own resume. And in terms of what is your greatest weakness or what are some of your weaknesses, explain how you've been improving or working on a weakness. I think this is like the best way to answer this question. And also I think what we recommend is if they ask you, what is your greatest weakness? You can answer it by saying something that I've been improving on, or one thing that I want to improve on is this. So you're not exactly admitting that it's a weakness, but you're basically sharing to them that you recognize it's something that you want to work on and you have the self-awareness. Another way to answer it is to talk about a weakness that could also be viewed as a strength. So for example, if your weakness is being too detail oriented and it takes you a little bit longer than other workers to complete a certain assignment, you can also say that it's important because you make less errors. And moving on.
Thanks, Alina. So next we're going to be talking about tell me about a time you. Interviewers want to learn about the way you do things and how you might act in a hypothetical situation. So some sample questions are tell me about a time you led a team at work, didn't get along with a coworker, reached a goal at work, took initiative, juggled multiple projects at once, and managed a stressful situation. So these are all situations that can happen at the workplace, and employers want to know how you reach conclusions and what you learned from your past experiences. Just like in the why should we hire you question, you should review the job description, but this time focus on the soft skills that are featured. So soft skills are what you might know as people skills, so things like conflict resolution, teamwork, leadership, clear communication, and listening skills. And then brainstorm a few examples of times you demonstrated those skills. It's fine if you use the same situation for multiple questions. Say if the time you led a team at work was also a time you took initiative. However, be sure that you highlight the people skills that are specific to that situation. So in this case, leading a team at work showcases cooperation, listening skills, and leadership, whereas taking initiative shows leadership, assertiveness, and ambition. So in an ideal answer, you'll first state what you learned in a sentence or two. For example, I learned early on in my professional career that it's fine to disagree if you can back up your hunches. So sometimes interviewers might not know what a story is leading up to, or they might misinterpret your story. So that opening statement helps to clarify things before you start telling your story. And then lastly, conclude by explaining how your experience relates back to the position. Next slide.
Awesome. So towards the end of the interview, or probably the last question that you're going to hear from an interviewer is, do you have any questions for us? And I think all of us just want to say, nope, thank you, and then get out of the interview. But it's really important to use this opportunity to make a memorable final impression. And if you're able to ask strong questions, then it is showing to the employer that you are sincere about your position or wanting to apply for this position and interview for this position. And it also allows you to be able to interview the company. So what you want to do is ahead of time prepare a list of questions, maybe around 5 or 6 in case some of them get answered throughout your interview. But research the company and have your questions personalized so that it caters to the role that you're applying for. And when you're formulating these types of questions, try to avoid asking about benefits because although that is something that you like we all want to know about our benefits, that's actually a question for later when you're extended an offer for the position. But if you're asking this question too early, then it might come off as you only want this job for the vacation time or the benefits. Also try to avoid asking closed-ended questions that elicit a yes or no answer. So if you're curious about, like if you want to ask the interviewer, do you enjoy your job? Instead of saying, do you enjoy your job, which is like yes or no, maybe say, what is your favorite part of working at this company? One sample question that I like is after reviewing the company website, I wanted to ask how have the values of diversity and integrity been shown in the workplace day to day? So this is a really great question again because they didn't ask you if you looked at the company website, but you're telling them that you've put in this extra effort to learn more about the company. So that is how to answer this question.
Okay, so obviously we didn't get to cover all of the questions today, so here are some additional ones that you should all consider preparing for. So what are your goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? When were you most satisfied in your job? What are you looking for in a new position? What can you do for us that other candidates can't? So this is kind of like the selling yourself question. What are 3 positive things your last boss or a supervisor or a club president would say about you? How do you prioritize your work? Could you explain this concept to me? So this is a technical question, like let's say you're being interviewed for a lab assistant position, might be, could you explain this psychology concept to me? And then lastly, is there anything else you'd like us to know? And now we'll be moving on to the Q&A portion of our webinar. If you have any questions for us, please submit them through the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen.
So I think we had some pre-submitted questions that we kind of touched on. So I think one of them asked about, the tell me about yourself question, and then also how to answer the do you have any questions for us question. One of them that we didn't necessarily touch on or didn't get to touch on a lot is how to be less nervous during an interview. Personally, for me, I think an interview is always going to be a little bit like nerve-wracking, just because it is that, one opportunity for you to sell yourself and present your best self to an employer. And this is the first time that they're talking to you, but they're also like, interrogating you. But at the same time, if you're able to practice a lot and be prepared for your responses or be prepared for any potential issues to come up and just be yourself, like I think that's all that they want to see. And they want to see that you are a learner, that you're proactive, that you care about the company, you care about growth, you care about contributing in any way possible. So if you highlight those kinds of general things that you would want if you were, recruiting someone, then I think that is the best that we can do.
Okay, I see one question in the Q&A. Would mentioning that you are interested because the position would be a stepping stone ever be appropriate? Because wouldn't it show growth in any way? So Alina, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I didn't have time to actually talk about that. So thank you for asking this question. What I think about that question and what I read online is that, of course, every position that we apply to, whether it's in our undergraduate career or even right after we graduate, it's going to probably be a stepping stone position to something else in the future. Like that's probably not going to be the last job we're ever going to have. So it's true that it's going to be a stepping stone position, but I think it kind of, if you phrase it in a way that I think there's different ways to phrase it because sometimes it can come off as like you're only seeking this position because you want, a better position in the future and you're kind of diminishing the importance of what the company does or this position. And if it's phrased in that way, then we would recommend trying to avoid talking about that. But I think it's important to utilize that question. Actually, let me go back to the specific question that, oh, sorry, wrong slide. I think it was this one. Yeah. So why do you want to work here? I think it's a good way to talk about your professional goals. I think that's good to talk about, maybe where you see yourself and how this position aligns with that. But I think try not to mention, okay, there's another position that I really want, and this position would lead me to that one. Maybe say that I would be able to grow in this position or I'd be able to contribute in this way to this company. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if like Chris or Sophie wants to add on to that.
Yeah, Lena, what exactly you said is probably what I would say. You have to kind of be a little bit careful in how you talk about this particular question and then how you answer it. And so everything that you said is pretty on point.
I'm not sure if there's another Q&A question. I can't see it since I'm sharing screen.
Nope.
Okay.
If there are no other questions, I think we can wrap up.
All right, sounds good. Let me go back to the slide. Okay, I think this is the last slide. So schedule your consultation with SARC. We are here for you for anything that you need professionally. If you need help with resume or cover letter checks, like we're happy to help you make edits, but you can make an appointment with us via SARC's website or the appointment system, and or you can email sarc@uci.edu, which is right here, to contact us. And appointments will take place over Zoom. And you can also follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, or our YouTube account where we will be posting this recording. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Oh, there's actually a question. It says, what job hunting resources are there for recent grads? That's a good question. I think, okay, so SARC has an internship database where we have active remote internships posted, and those are like, recent ones that we've connected with the employers and then asked them if they have any positions open. So you can try to check those out and see if any of those apply to what you're looking for. Also, we have in the internship database, we have past internships. So previous employers that students have worked with, and those are not technically updated because those were internships that happened in person, but you can still contact employers and see if they have any open positions for you. But if you're looking for other job hunting resources, you can check out the Division of Career Pathways. They have a lot of resources such as BuzzFile, which I like to use because it sorts everything by majors. And then once you click on a major, it shows you like employers who would hire students of these majors. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully I answered that question. All right. If there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and end it here. Thank you so much. If any other further questions come up, feel free to email Stark and we're here for you. Okay, thank
Thank you.
you.